Good evening and welcome to the Garland Red Cup Variety Podcast, a special podcast tonight. And it's Mr. Paul Garwood that you see right there. I'm Logan Lanier. And again, so glad to join you tonight. It's a little out of our realm here because we normally on Saturdays, but this is a special podcast and it's in regards to the chaos at the Capitol. And we know you all got a lot of feelings behind that. And, glad that you're able to join us tonight. And if you go on one of our pages, either Paul's page or mine, you will see that link. You can join us live. If you just hit that link, and we will get you an order received. And you can do that at any time. We're going to be here from 7 to 8, just talking about what happened, the events on yesterday, the day before yesterday. And so, Mr. Garwood, again, that was a very low time in our nation's history. And one, I think it was it Schumer? Who's next? Who's next to Nancy Pelosi?
Schumer is in the Senate. He's the majority leader now in the Senate after the amazing victory that we had in Georgia. When we flipped that state.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the one that's next to December 7th, which is Pearl Harbor Day.
Yeah.
They say that's a day that will live forever in infamy.
Without a doubt.
He said the same thing for the events on January 7th.
Yes.
So, your thoughts? I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, and I'm asking because you have a 14-year-old son, and what did you do when all that was taking place?
Well, as it was unfolding, I was watching it. I work from home, so I'm looking at it, and I was just amazed. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was so many things. I've been to the Capitol, taken my family to the Capitol, visited the Capitol. I know the security of the Capitol, and for me to see a group of people take over the Capitol without knowing that this was going to happen weeks in advance, I was stunned. Brother Logan, I was stunned. A variety of things went through my head, and I'm just gonna keep it simple. It was horrific. It was terrifying. It was like they say, it was definitely an attack on our democracy. I felt for the people that was inside the building. One of the things that really concerned me was when they said that they was taking everybody to the basement. Okay. And we were both in law enforcement. We both had to evacuate. All right. And only thing I could think of is I hope that they don't take them down the basement and then set the Capitol on fire. But they was taking them to the other tunnel to get them out. But
right.
It was a terrible day. It was definitely an attack on our democracy, and something that we have to really, really pay close attention to, and there has to be some action. I'm not talking about some aggressive action taken so that something like that wouldn't happen again. What you think?
Well, before I get to me, let me ask you, because again, you have a 14-year-old son.
Yeah.
How did you interact with him in regards to that?
Well, I was just truthful with him. We was looking at it. He was asking a lot of questions. Why is this happening? He had been there before. He was with me when we went. We had a situation that happened when we went into the Capitol. I'm very friendly, so it was two guards there. And I spoke to them. Hey, how you doing? They were sitting there with the guns, fatigues, and they looked at me like I was a ghost. They looked at me like, how dare you even speak to me? So, only thing he was asking is all the security that we had to go through when we was there. Why are they just walking in, with flag poles and tire irons and just walking in like it was nothing. All right, and I had to explain to him. I said, well, I can't tell you exactly what's going on, but it's something definitely different that's going on.
Okay.
And yeah.
Well, and I'm gonna talk. We're gonna get to the kids here in a minute because, again, this is it was a very unprecedented event. My thoughts on that, and not dating myself, okay, but I've lived through quite a few events that happened within the U.S. And again, I just remember vividly. Again, and we talking about some of the unrest that happened in the '60s.
Yes.
And I wasn't a part of any type of violence or anything like that. But just understanding what Dr. Martin Luther King went through, his assassination, and how that left a damper on the nation, and Kennedy in '68, and then of course the 9/11, which was very horrific. Okay, this doesn't compare to 9/11, close. Okay, because it happened on U.S. soil and it was with our own people. How I felt about that, I'm not surprised. And let me just say this, okay? Sad, frustrated, but not surprised. It's just something that was going to inevitably happen, okay, as how things were going with our president. So, I'm actually surprised it wasn't worse than what it was.
I think we were very lucky.
Yeah. Okay. It could have been worse than what it was. All right. So, again, my thoughts are, yeah, I'm saddened by it. I'm upset about it, but I'm not surprised. And so,
I remember 9/11 vividly because I was working at the airline when 9/11, and I was pushing out a plane, and the pilot said halt, pushback, and I couldn't understand why. So then I pulled him back in and said, what's going on? And he said, well, a plane that hit the World Trade Center. So I pulled him in and we went into the break room just in time to see the second plane hit. Okay.
right.
So, when they cleared the skies, I bought in planes, myself and my coworkers, we bought in, they said, clear the sky, drop at the airport, the closest airport. We bought in planes. It wasn't just our planes and Northwest Airlines at the time. We was bringing in planes. Any plane that landed, we was bringing in. All right. That was very scary. We didn't know if it was, they said it was suicide planes in the air. We didn't know what was going on. All right. That was very scary.
Yes.
They said it was a terrorist attack. Naturally, we felt like it was from the, from the Middle East, somewhere in the Middle East. The reason why I think that this one, and that truly affected me. It really did. It truly affected me. It affected my whole life. My life changed because of 9/11. Kind of started on the where I'm at today, because we went through a lot. We went through layoffs. We went through bankruptcy. We went through merger. We went through a lot and changed our lives. But this one here, Logan, this wasn't Osama bin Laden. Okay.
Right.
This wasn't Osama bin Laden. Okay. This wasn't Saddam Hussein. Okay.
Right.
This wasn't people from another country. This was from our leader and our own citizens. Okay.
Right.
That is, man, that's way deeper than 9/11. Okay, that's way deeper than as bad as 9/11 was, and God forgive me if I'm not minimizing it, because it was terrible. It was horrific. But this here was unprecedented, man.
Yes, sir. Our podcast is brought to you by and produced by 22 Design Studios. And you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube at Garland Podcast. And again, this is a special show, and your comments are welcome. If you just go on my page, my Logan Lanier page, my personal page, or Paul Garwood's page, and you will see the link to come into our studio live with your comments, and we'll take them in order received, and we'll just be glad to have you on at this special podcast. But as we go forward here, they're thinking about now moving forward with everything. I mean, we're going to have the inauguration now, okay? And that's going to be a very, very special day within itself. But because of what happened, there are some things now that has to take place. And so now they are talking about moving into impeach. It sounds like they're moving into impeach more so now than using the 25th Amendment. And I think it's something that they want to do expeditiously. So your thoughts on that? For those that don't know, the 25th Amendment, okay, that gives Congress the right to remove the president from office, okay? Impeachment is more on a legal sense with hearings and that kind of thing, and it's more of a court, setting, just kind of, putting it mildly, plainly. But go ahead, your thoughts on that, Paul. What in them moving into this direction?
Well, I think it's necessary. For all the listeners, piggybacking on what Brother Logan said, the 25th Amendment is a part of the U.S. Constitution that says that if the president is unable to do his job, the vice president can take over as president. And this can happen for a little while. It usually happens when somebody is sick or disabled or just deemed that they can't perform their duties, and that the mental capacity is not there for them to make the decisions that's necessary to keep this country safe. As far as the between the 25th Amendment, the impeachment. Well, I sat there in 1974. I sat there on a Thursday night, and I can't remember the day, but I sat there on a Thursday night and watched President Richard Nixon resign. Okay. I feel like this is what needs to happen now. Okay. I feel like that, somebody need to, the powers to be in the Republican Party, they need to go to the White House and tell him, hey, your plan is ready. It's time to resign.
Okay.
That would be 12 days to go, and to kind of ensure a peaceful transition from the Trump administration to the Biden administration. I think that would be the best case. But I don't think the 25th Amendment, they have to have too many people to agree. I don't think it's enough time. I don't think that would go through. But I read today that the House of Representatives, the House is going to impeach. Okay, so that's a black mark. When you talk about legacy, if an impeachment would go through, what happens is you can't run for office again. Okay, and that's monumental.
Yes.
When you talk in 2024, okay, and the rhetoric that there might be another run for president, but something, something definitely has to be done, because people, some citizens are cheering it on, but you got a lot of citizens that shook by this. And, if you want to have a democracy, you have to stand up for that democracy. Okay. And if you let things like this start, what's the old saying? You can, if you get to flowing, start building, then, some anything can happen. I wish for the days when where, well, those days are no more, to where you can sit down and compromise and come to an agreement, for the sake of the nation. But I think those days are behind us. So yes, you have to have a firm stand to something like this. So if it takes the quitting, resigning, the 25th Amendment, or impeachment, there has to be some type of response to this.
Okay. Okay. Again, our podcast is the Garland Red Cup Variety Podcast, where there's always something good in the Red Cup, produced by 22 Design Studios. And we have a guest, and we're going to let in, I think it is my nephew.
Okay.
We're going to see. Hello, this was, he just put DJ up there. How you doing, DJ?
Doing all right. How are gentlemen doing this evening?
All right. How you doing, DJ?
Welcome to the show, sir. And again, my viewers, this is my nephew. This is David Wallace Jr., who is in Washington, D.C. as we speak. And he has when we say intelligence, he works in intelligence with the U.S. Navy. And I'm sure he has some comments and some things he'd like to say in regards to the chaos at the Capitol. Chaos at the Capitol on January 7th. Go ahead, DJ. What are your thoughts?
Thanks for having me on. Disheartening, ashamed. Being a veteran in America, first and foremost, you see things like this happen and immediately, it's not the shock, the dismay.
Mm-hmm.
You don't serve just for your community, just for your family. You serve for everybody. When you go abroad, you represent the country. That flag is on you. When you pass away and they give you those honors, that flag is over you. When you come out of boot camp, that flag, it doesn't say Detroit, it doesn't say DC, it doesn't say Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
It's the United States of America, it's the United States Navy.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see this group of individuals allegedly in defense of, their rights as citizens, protesting, creating chaos, havoc, looking to harm in the name of the country, it's quite disappointing. It's frustrating, it's infuriating, not only as a veteran, but also as a citizen, a voter. You feel this sense of entitlement amongst them. Like, wow, you all can handle the victory, but you can't handle the defeat.
Mm-hmm.
You can handle, the joy and the jubilation when things go your way, but you seem to struggle with the disappointment when it doesn't go your way.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the catch that they need to learn to cope with. At the end of the day, it's for everybody's good, no matter what. It may not be the individual that you want there in the presidential Oval Office, over, at the Naval Observatory where the vice president lives, but you still have several representatives in Congress at your behest, and now you've decided to attack them, your selected representatives, because things didn't go your way,
Mm-hmm.
because of misinformation and a misunderstanding of the process. That's disrespectful. It's deceitful. It's disgusting. It's disingenuous. There's a whole lot of dis in there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not right. And with the law enforcement angle, I called my father immediately and said, are you seeing what's happening? Just, wanted to get his take from that side of things, as a police officer.
Right.
Whenever these types of things occur, I want to get his take on it.
Right.
I want to get your take on it. Anybody else, I grew up around law enforcement.
Right. Right.
All my fellow military members, veterans and those that are active or reserve and intelligence professionals alike, we just sort of sat there taken aback completely because of the lack of planning, the poor execution, the lack of awareness, the ability to allow the situation to escalate without any form or attempt. At least, seeming that's what it appeared, and so far the reports seem to, at least suggest that what we were feeling was right. Nothing was done in the time frame that it needed to be done. There was more than enough time. Those people had been lined up since 4:00 in the morning. You could have had a decent head count of what to anticipate based off all the previous weeks of reports and other events that had occurred, of what you could expect. I'll tell you this. We were in D.C. a few weeks back, and we stayed the night over downtown, hanging out, the wife and I. The night before, it was a Friday night. It was peaceful, lovely, quiet. You know, we went out for a little walk, enjoyed the view. I love DC.
Yes.
Mr. Paul Garwood, you know, Uncle Logan knows, I love DC, man.
Yes.
I absolutely adore DC. I love the history. I love the architecture. I just love everything about the community, the food, the music. So we, you know, when we get a chance to, you know, to set out, we set out. The next day we wake up, sirens, people everywhere. And I'm like, what is this? We hit the news. It's another one of those rallies. Spur of the moment. Thousands of people have descended on DC. This is within a few weeks of what transpired a couple of days ago.
I was gonna say and we don't even know about. Nobody even know about this rally.
Nobody even knew about that one. So it's not as if you haven't seen something like this that can appear. Now it's not as if you don't have a blueprint for what to anticipate. You know, again, looking at my intelligence experience, at your shared law enforcement experience, you use what you have at your disposal. Previous events,
right?
Trends and analysis, planning, then you execute.
Yeah.
And if you have to fall back, you fall back to that plan B, which should be in place. If you have to call for the backup, these people should be notified. That network should already be established. What occurred the other day was a travesty on all fronts, failure across the board, from the leadership top down. And we've said that several times over the course of the last few years. Amazing how in 8 years during the Obama presidency, you know, this didn't seem to happen too often. You know, and I was in uniform. I can't recollect the time where I said to myself, man, I'm pretty ashamed right now. Man, it didn't happen.
Right.
And I'm not saying that as the guy that, you know, who admires President Obama. I'm saying that as a person who was in uniform in some sticky situations on the front lines in harm's way. At no point in time did I ever say to myself, man, I don't think we're getting out of this one. But I've heard several congressmen say that in the last 48 hours. I've seen several police officers attest to that via the media in the last 48 hours. So
Let me ask you something. I read here within the last couple of hours where, and we were just talking about planning that and you can correct me, the real entry. Some of the law enforcement let some of the protesters in, like they were waiting for them to come on in, like you would come to my house and I just let you in.
That's the temperature check right now, is that there have been some individuals amongst those that were on the scene more willing than not to allow people to just walk on in. Now, whether you know, they got the word, you know, via the radio, or whether, you know, they decided amongst themselves early, if the staying get too sticky, we just gonna let it rock. The pension ain't that good. You know, whatever the case may be, a decision was made. Whoever knows what the intentions are, you know, we'll find out. The federal government gonna find out. You know, but it does appear that, you know, somewhere along the line, a few people decided to just step out of the way and, you know, say, you know what, this ain't it, and stood to the side. And there's a few videos of the selfies, and a few videos of the individuals, you know, helping folks out, steps, and, you know, high fives, and all sorts of, you know, interesting.
Amongst law enforcement.
You know,
high fives.
You know, just a few high fives, a few, you know, hey, you know, a few moments of, hey, why don't you calm down there? Instead of, you know, you need to back up. You need to back up. My weapon is engaged. You need to take a step back. You need to reevaluate what you think you're going to do, because I know what I'm trained to do.
You know, brother, it seemed like planned complacency. Planned. It was planned complacency, to where we're going to let this happen. We're going to control it. Okay? But we're going to let it happen. And why? You know, I've heard two, let me say something. I've heard two different scenarios that was really something. Okay? the first one was this. They let it happen because they agreed with the message. Okay, that was the first one. But then a person said, "Look at the results of letting it happen. Look at the results of letting it happen."
Mm-hmm.
Something was broke. That grip that was had on so many of these congressmen and representatives, it was broke. Finally they was able. This incident woke them up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so this is one of the reasons why people don't talk politics in depth, in regular conversations, because politics is so deep. And the strategic planning of things is so deep. Okay, it's not something a lot of times the common man, you have to have a law enforcement background or a political background or military background to really understand why some things are allowed to cause to meet a cause. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that this was it. I'm just, this is a talk show. So on a talk show, we talk about many different scenarios. So, the audience, I don't know. I'm not saying, but I always look at what happens after the incident.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
You're trained. When you're in investigations, you look at the person who can benefit the most from the demise of this individual.
There you go.
Right.
Okay. So what I'm doing, I'm looking at the outcome.
Right.
I'm looking at the after effects. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first, I think we're going to go through a scary period, but for the first time in 4 years, people are outraged about this administration. I've never seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The outrage about this administration because of this.
So it took this for people for their awareness antennas to be raised.
Yes, it took this. For remember 9/11. For us to get serious about protecting this country, it took 9/11 to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. You have to shock the system in order to.
You got to shock the system.
Shock the system. When you're in the gym, you working out, you want to get your muscle reflexes to a certain point, you got to shock the system.
Yep.
And a lot of history has been brought up over the course of the last couple of days. And the 3 days you brought up, one 9/11, of course, the one a couple of days ago, and then Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was a jolt to the system, the likes of which people for the longest didn't believe could actually occur because of the standoff distance of the country and the might and the prestige of America by the time the 40s had come around. But again, it was that shock. And what did that shock do? It shocked us out of a depression into a wartime mode and into a victory.
Mm-hmm.
Into a victory. Absolutely.
So, I mean, there's a lot to what you're saying, and I absolutely 1,000% agree with what comes next. Like, who had what to say, who has what to benefit from. There's a lot at stake. There's a lot at stake. And you don't know if it's, the current administration, on their way out in terms of, the monetary value that can be, gained out of whatever they have next, or the individuals on the way in, or, whoever else sees themselves in a position of authority later down the road. But I do agree that a lot will be learned in the coming months in terms of, where we go now as a whole.
Yeah.
One of the major things that was learned from this is we live in two separate Americas. That's when you look at what was on the Capitol steps with the Black Lives Matter march, in full gear, standing there, we're protecting this. When you look at the treatment of peaceful marchers of all colors, I'm not talking about just black people, peaceful marchers of all colors, they were there to support a cause, how they were treated. LeBron James said today, this shows, this has been, it's kind of like in Birmingham, Alabama, when they went to showing everything that was going on down there. The reaction to this solidifies the fact that we live in two separate Americas. Now it's blatantly put on the table. Now, where do we go from here? Okay, to where do we go from here to where we can sit at the table and rectify this racism cancer that plagues this country? Because this event here shows, we couldn't come close to minority marches would never come close to overrunning the Capitol.
No.
Nowhere near. You wouldn't have got within 50 yards, quite frankly.
When it got there.
You wouldn't have got within 50 yards.
If you'd have been climbing up the Capitol to change a flag, or if you'd have been climbing up the Capitol to break a window, you'd have been sniped down.
The way I know Washington, like I know it, you couldn't. I'm surprised. I'm looking at, because I'm a, when I was in law enforcement, I did perimeter stuff. We did a lot of things in regards to perimeter. How were they allowed to penetrate that perimeter? Because when I went, I couldn't go as far as the sidewalk.
Yes.
Precisely.
They were all the way over, all the way, how the Capitol sits back, okay, and there's that large berm or whatever that is in front. How were they allowed to get, there was a barricade, so you couldn't even come across that. That what baffles me.
That's the key. If you look at, so again, you get back to the history thing. You look at the way the Viet Cong used to test the war line. If you talk to Vietnam vets, or if you watch documentaries, that first people through automatically assumed they was getting mowed down. You just testing the perimeter. You just want to see what that line is like. You want to see what that response is going to be. And if that response isn't what you assumed it was going to be, you wave it behind you. And then everybody else is coming in that first wave. Not the whole wave, but that first wave. That was the problem. That first wave got through, and you see, a couple thousand people. That's it. You get a couple thousand people heading your way, and everybody behind them says, wait a minute. They went through just fine. Let's go. That second wave is going to be 3 times as large, likely. What do you do with that at that point? And that gets back to, what we think we've all said. You've lost it at that point. You've already lost the control. That's it.
This reminds me of, I'm going back to 9/11, and you're military. I'm not sure how long you've been in the military, but this was 9/11, and we all said, I worked at the airline, okay, we all said, how did a plane hit the Pentagon? How do you, Washington D.C. airspace is protected. How does a plane get through that and hit the Pentagon? Okay. Again, first thing we said was, okay, this is not normal. Okay, this is not normal. Look at what happens afterward.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
You look at what happened, because it's not. This is something everybody can blatantly see that this is not something that is supposed to happen, and it's almost impossible to happen. You got to look at why did it happen.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. And I feel bad for the guys that suit up, that wanted to do the right thing, but it was clear after about the first 20 minutes, not everybody wanted to do the right thing. So you feel bad for those career guys who wanted to do what needed to be done and were doing the best they could. And you saw a few of them, the guys that were getting, the congressmen and women from point A to point B, that were securing the spaces the appropriate way. The one clip that really bothers me, and it frightened me a little bit, is the brother running up the steps, the police officer, with a large group behind him. That's terrifying. He felt alone in that. He shouldn't have felt alone, first and foremost. That threat was already near and present.
Yeah.
But that's a terrible thing and a terrible situation to see somebody in, let alone be in. So, you feel for that man because he didn't want to be in that position, but you got to flee. You've lost the ground at that point. If
he was on post by himself. He was on post by himself.
So if he pulls out his gun and starts mowing people down, and then what? If he can even get a couple of shots off before them people keep rushing, you never know.
Yeah, they're gonna overrun him. Yeah,
precisely, and that's the way. I saw the video earlier of the young lady who was killed because she was trying to kick in the windows and whatnot. And the interesting thing that I took away from that video wasn't that she was killed or why she was killed. It was the reaction of everyone else around her. Those people didn't flinch. She fell back. They tried to pull her out of the way and keep moving forward. And it wasn't until those additional police officers came up the steps with the heavier guns that they stood off. And even then, they didn't stand off completely. They were still within an arm's length.
Yeah.
That says a lot about the intentions and the motives, at least of the civilians that were on the scene. They had a mission. They wanted to accomplish the mission. They factored in losses.
Yeah.
Our podcast is again brought to you by 22 Design Studios. And if you would like to comment, again, if you just go to our Facebook page, either Logan Lanier or Paul Garwood, there's a link to our podcast, special podcast right now. Your comments are welcome. Hit that link and we will bring you on. So DJ, let me ask you something now, kind of shifting a little bit. They're talking about, and maybe you can enlighten us a little bit more on this, because again, this is your field. They're talking about impeaching the president. So they're talking about articles of impeachment. Okay, what do they mean by that?
All right, so in order to actually impeach a sitting president, you got to meet certain criteria. So liken it to, you have the dry case of murder. But within murder, you have the subsets, and you got to break those out. You got to prove them. So whenever you take a case, a docket, up, you got to have your reasoning, your case built out, and you got to be able to meet that standard criteria. So the first one I've seen that the media has been talking about, they got their hands on the early draft of it, was the insurrection. So under insurrection, you got to break out. So why are you accusing the accused of insurrection? And you got to state out that case. So this is the articles of impeachment. So when they break out the articles, they're talking about the various things in which you're talking about accusing and charging a given individual of, and then you break those out, step through. You just step through them. That's all it is. It's no different than when you're charging a case against somebody, but you got to liken it to you're charging a RICO style case effectively. When you push an impeachment, it's no different when you push a RICO. You got to have a lot on the docket to push a RICO through. There's got to be a lot of names, a lot of dates. The full narrative has to flow the right way, and it all has to coincide with the appropriate levels and measures of law to go hand in hand with everything that you're saying. You got to be able to prove all of that. And that's really what takes so long generally when you talk about people preparing impeachment. A lot of people see impeachment, and immediately the one thing that comes to mind prior to last year, of course, was President Clinton, but they were only really getting so much of the information and all of that. They didn't realize, so people forget. We all laugh and joke, about, the sexual innuendos and things like that, but he was actually accused of lying to Congress, which is, against the law. But when you get into the
that's impeachable. That was impeachable for him.
That's an impeachable offense, as if they all don't do it. But but we all know they walked the dog on that one. Last year's impeachable offense, was a significant step what had happened back in the mid to late 90s with President Clinton. This time around is an even further departure, and of course, insurrection is the first one. They're talking about trying to potentially. I think there's going to be 3 that are brought up. I've seen the 3 congressmen who were supposed to introduce it. Ms. Pelosi's she's put it on the table. Said first thing Monday we're going to introduce them. But like I said, I know insurrection is one. I know there was discussion about potentially bringing in the more recent phone call. But some are saying, that may be too far out of the purview. They want to keep this as narrow in scope as possible because it's a lot easier to get people on board if the focus is more narrow and if the case is more definitive. So you stick to the things that happen in that
Right.
well-defined timeline. So then when they get to the articles of impeachment, that's what they mean to answer the
Right.
question.
So now real quick, impeachment is a lot expeditiously done than the 25th
Yes and
Amendment.
no. Yes and no. So
Or are they both?
both can be done rather
Okay.
quickly, to be perfectly honest. If all parties involved, like, all right, so here you go. If the vice president would have said literally getting escorted out of there, given everything that's already occurred, he could have turned around and looked at Mitch, looked at Nancy, and said, I'm making a call right now. Could have called the cabinet. Cabinet could have got together, said, you guys are seeing what's happening. All the evidence we have on the table, let's take a vote right now. Everybody on board? Aye. He looked at Mitch, looked at Nancy. We had it. You got it. Let's write it up. Let's get the AG on the
That's
line,
it.
have them certify it, swear me in. We're on our merry way. That's the pretty way of going. With the way Nancy's going to pursue this impeachment, additionally, is also effectively the pretty way of doing it. A traditional impeachment, as we've seen it in our times, having seen two now, it takes a few weeks to draw out a case, if you will, just because of the workings of Congress. Nancy found a remarkable loophole. She said in 48 hours, not only are we going to deliver them, we going to sign them, we going to vote them.
But remember,
Okay.
like what happened the first time, okay? That's the House. Now, getting it through the Senate is a whole different story.
You need 16.
See, that's what happened. That's what happened the first time. It was voted on in the House, but the Senate destroyed it, knocked it down. That same.
Well, don't you? Oh, no, I was going to say, don't you think now, with the events that happened, okay?
No.
The gloves are off. It's they can't look at it like, well, this has happened, and this is a great stain on the democracy. So don't you think it would, because what they need from the Senate, 2/3?
Republicans to get on board with you right now.
Okay.
It's
Okay,
building.
so-
It's building.
right.
It's building. I'm not saying what happened over the weekend, because more and more people are jumping off the bandwagon. More people are calling for the resignation. More people are calling. But with the 25th Amendment, the vice president has already said that he's not going to do that. And then with the House, with the Senate, it still it would be about how much control do Mitch McConnell have, and will he be able to convince them to do it? The best thing, honestly, just like I don't, DJ, you might agree with this. The best thing would be for a caravan of people to go up to the White House and say, "Hey, your plan is ready. It's time to resign."
Well, that's what they're trying to do now, though, right? They're trying to talk him into resigning. But let me ask you one more thing about impeachment. If they were to impeach him now, okay, this can carry on beyond January 20th.
Yeah.
So
See,
the irony.
because it's
Here's
court.
the irony of how
it's legal.
that pretty nugget
Okay.
that you just brought up. You know who brought that up and why they brought that up? Matt Gaetz brought that
Pelosi.
up last year because they were still trying to prove cases against President Obama, and said, I quote, "You can still impeach a president after his term." Guess what? You can still impeach the president after his term. And what else happens in the next couple of weeks? The Senate shifts. Thank you, Georgia. So,
But you have this though. But you still have something else that would be unprecedented, but I think it's going to happen. He's going to pardon himself.
absolutely.
And when a pardon covers all federal offenses.
Absolutely.
He's going to pardon himself. He's going to pardon his kids. He's gonna pardon different ones. So he's going to pardon himself.
Absolutely.
So that's a whole nother.
Does that save him from impeachment, though?
So you got to remember, it's 2 steps to impeachment. So there's the House process where you're impeached. But then the Senate process convicts you.
Which is where we
So it finds you guilty. So you can be impeached
Okay.
without being found guilty,
Okay.
and vice versa, which is effectively what happened with Clinton. He was impeached, but he wasn't
Okay.
found guilty. And the same thing, with Trump last year.
Okay.
Going forward, I would be shocked if that's not what happens again. But he may blanket pardon himself. But I would be shocked again on the back end of that if there isn't another play at stake. I think Nancy's play is he didn't enjoy being impeached the first time just because he doesn't like that label. He absolutely will not enjoy the label this time as well, because now you're not only the one-time impeached president, you're now the two-time, one-term impeached president.
So, and we just lost Paul. We're probably getting back here in a minute. So, let me get this right. He can pardon himself in these next 13 days, and that would delay the impeachment process.
At least in his head, and vaguely constitutionally absolve him. But there's another niche in there that most people don't understand. When you issue a pardon, you have to have a corresponding charge. And along with said corresponding charge, you have to accept guilt. So you have to acknowledge guilt for that charge in order for that pardon to be executed.
So let me ask you this. If he does that, not with the impeachment procedures withstanding, he can say, I want to pardon myself from X blah, 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 something that happened that occurred during the presidency.
Yes.
And he's admitting guilt to that. Is it a double jeopardy to that? So in other words, if he admits guilt to something federal, can they still come after him for that same charge? Or
federally.
The state can. But the state can.
And that New York State attorney.
Okay.
I got lined up in the state.
I got it. Yep.
So,
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So my man, he got there's some stuff. Hey, the chips are starting to stack up a little bit.
Thick in the collar, and that. But when you play dice with a bad hand, eventually the gang will catch up to you. It is what it is, So
Yeah.
And it's a shame that so many people are seeing it at the very end. But I mean, better late than never, I suppose. What happened the other day didn't need to happen. It shouldn't have happened. But maybe we come out of it better, stronger. Who knows? American history is an oddity compared to other, countries in terms of our ability to bounce back after travesty. Most countries never recover after a civil war. And you can make the argument that while on the surface we absolutely recovered, became a world power, up under the surface we had a lot, and we still have a lot, to work out. We went from the Civil War into Reconstruction, which for a brief period was one of the more prosperous but, overlooked periods in history, because that dovetailed directly into Jim Crow, and interestingly enough, Jim Crow dovetails directly into, the burgeoning age of growing power for the United States, becoming a world power in the age of, a bigger, badder Navy, in the age of Teddy Roosevelt, and things like that, so many things are often, they butt up against these other things. The Depression butts up directly against World War II. More people are going to be wanting to, discuss World War II and the victories and ignore that 12, 13-year run of drought, despair, gross inequity, and things of that nature, and so on and so forth. People want to overlook what happened in 68 because so much happened in 68. You were a child in Detroit. So much happened in 68, between the assassinations.
Yep.
But the bigger thing that happened in 68, and it's not even just the war, was the political shift of the Democrat-Republican divide. They flip-flopped officially in 68. So
Right.
people need to understand the history of how all of that works. But again, because that butts up against the 70s, and you run into the Nixonian years, and you run into, the oil crisis, you run into all of these different things that are happening, you kind of lose a lot of that. It loses its luster. The 9/11 years lost their luster within a 4 or 5 year period because we went into a recession. So people shifted how they were looking and viewing certain things because they were so preoccupied with the banks failing and the bailouts that needed to occur. You begin to lose sight. So now we're in another period where, okay, maybe we're coming out of, a couple wars as they're starting to wind down. But now we've entered the back end of this Trump period, and we're in a pandemic. Well, what have we talked about these last couple of days? Certainly not the pandemic that's still raging. No, we've talked about the fact that one of the worst events, at least within the history of DC specifically, occurred. And now we're locked into what happens next. Because we have such a mystery that resides in the White House, we have no idea where this thing goes. So again, another major event has been buttressed by another major event. It's history. That's the way it works.
Wow. Again, our podcast, the Garland Red Cup Variety Podcast, is brought to you by and produced by 22 Design Studios. And as we continue to go forward, we got about 7 minutes left. And again, and anybody, any viewers, we would love your comments. Again, hit that link, go to my page and hit that link. Don't be shy. Come on into the show and tell us what you think. And we'll be glad to have you. Again, we lost Paul. We lost the audio for Paul and the video. I see his I see the box there, but we don't see him. So he's having an issue. But we'll just keep going here. So now, going forward, there you go. Going forward, as we were talking, all the events. Okay, now we're in the wait and see. Okay, we're in the. This is the most important. What happened was horrible. Where do we go from here? And that's going to be very, very interesting to see where the United States government, the Congress, takes this. There's a lot of questions that got to be answered from a law enforcement, and accountability has got to happen. Okay, it's going to be some accountability. So. A lot of people have already ducked out. I understand the chief of the U.S. Capitol Law Enforcement. He gone.
We're gone. You know what?
As of, was it today?
Today. Yes, today.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me good? Okay,
yeah. Good.
Sorry for the technical difficulty. We had a surge here, so I had to went off and come back on.
You told that squirrel off the roof, man.
That squirrel, yeah. You know what?
Anyway, go ahead.
It might have been one of them supporters that was up there. What we were talking about was so good. It said, let me do something with this right quick. I hope I'm not rehashing because I was gone for 5 minutes, but my biggest concern now is they're not going anywhere. What can President-elect Biden can he reach out to these millions of people? Okay, remember it was 75 million people voted for Trump, and you have two factions. They're upset. You can't just ignore them. Ignore them away. Will they really turn into a consistent domestic terrorist. So this is what they're calling them. They're calling this domestic terrorism. Okay, you don't want to have a life. We as American citizens don't want to live a life like that. Okay, we already went through, a year of almost being locked at home. We can't do anything. I pray that the right and the left can come together and form some type of coalition to where they can start back to working together. What you think about that, DJ?
Well, here's the irony. Those same individuals are the friends, brothers, sisters, cousins, uncles of the same individuals that at the end of the 80s until the early 90s, the FBI began to truly be worried about. When you look at, all the various domestic terror events that sort of spread and seemingly appeared out of nowhere. So this
the militia, and that's the militia.
So these individuals have been around for quite some time. This is the first time somebody truly embraced, seemingly, and acknowledged, their presence and uplifted them to that national level platform. Here's the other side of that coin. They split the party with a significant portion of individuals who weren't as easily entertained as the individual on his way out of the door in D.C. So that, to be perfectly honest, is going to have to be more so handled in-house. I think Joe and Kamala are going to do a phenomenal job so far as they can do, because they have what that other administration didn't have: experience in this realm. They have that political savvy. They have the friends and the connections. And while on the surface, in front of the microphone, if you read the new Obama book, he discusses this. You're going to get the loud mouths. You're going to get the Mitches, those types of individuals. They're going to say all sorts of things to the microphone and the talking heads. But when that door closes, people still got to eat. Work still has to get done. Money still has to get spent. They're going to make the deals. So I think that's what's going to end up happening. I think, and the other thing, too, to wrap it up, I think the pandemic will wind down. People will get outside. Opportunities will begin to arise again. Hopes will be lifted. And that'll help shift some of the tone as well. I think, no different than what we saw this past summer with all of these kids. They had all this angst that was built up over a little bit of time. And you see a George Floyd, enough is enough. Well, on that side of the coin, in my business, you got to put yourself in those other individuals' shoes. To them, because of the way they see the world, enough was enough. Now, whether they reacted appropriately, that's a whole different topic. My personal opinion, they absolutely did not. But you can't discount the gripe, the genuine nature of the gripe. A lot of it, is obnoxious. But there is some concern there, whether it be healthcare or whether it be, where the economy goes. Will we be having a seat at the table? Granted, your representation at the table is habitually and historically somewhere in the neighborhood of 75%, but that's neither here nor there. But do they feel like a person is speaking for them the way they like to be spoken for? And I think at the end of the day, a lot of us have oftentimes felt like that. Dr. King was that for, your generation and your childhood and in your parents' generation, at their peak, coming into their own. He was that. And when he gets mowed down, the question was, for the longest, well, who was next? And you had a lot of other figures that came out, but it wasn't really until President Obama came out that those shoes were truly felt on a national level across the board. It takes a while to fill the board. And I think that same sort of thing for them is likely going to have to occur, hopefully in a much more tame fashion.
Right.
So we'll see.
Why? What I want to, for everybody that's watching, everybody that's going to watch, when I sit down and when I think of my 59 years, and like Brother Logan said, we done seen a lot. All right. He's 1 year older than me. Why? And I'm going to be emphatic with this. why is equality so scary? Because I think the bottom line is equality is not something that's embraced. Okay? Why do you want to constantly have a group of people below you? Equality shouldn't be fearful.
Mhm.
You shouldn't be fearful of equality. I don't know if it's a guilty conscience. I don't know what the reason is. I take, for example, voting. For years, the black vote was sometimes non-existent. Okay? We didn't get out and vote. Only for certain people, Clinton, President Obama, but we didn't get out and vote. But now all of a sudden, with the help of Stacey Abrams and her team and so many different organizations throughout the country, we realized the power of our vote. Now, once we realize the power of our vote, now something's wrong with the voting system.
Well, that's historically
The elections are not fair. Go ahead, bro.
historically the way it's been. If you look at, so I mentioned
That's
Reconstruction.
historical.
The same thing was the fear in the Reconstruction period. Before it was known that African Americans may or may not have a valuable or be a valuable voting bloc, they were just completely discounted and written off until they actually turned out that first time to vote. And then what happened? The shape of the South became a whole lot different instantly, immediately. That enfranchisement within a half a generation immediately shifted the way things were. So because of situations like that, the momentum of history instantly sent a ripple that couldn't be reversed, because people saw something at that time that they had for years convinced themselves couldn't exist, that the slave couldn't learn, let alone teach. Not only did you figure out in an instant that they could do those things, you learned that they knew how to do with the power that you had so cravingly held them from. And guess what? As history went on, the Native Americans, the Asian Americans, the Latino Americans, all the exact same thing, began to sort of find themselves in their footing. On the other side of that ball, that power shifted, and that fear that you speak of, it became a little bit more fluid, a little less firm. And the problem is the misunderstanding and the misinterpretation of the point of the United States Constitution and the founding of the United States of America. People at its core have to remember that those individuals, while of means, were a generation or two themselves new to the land in which they were trying to create, because their families and their friends had to flee some level of persecution, religious, mostly. But again, history is so muddied at this point in time because of how people want to use it to their advantage. They don't take the time to sit down and fully understand the motivations for certain things, the stress. A lot of different people were in that room when that Constitution was getting written up. The way they teach history, you assume it happened in a week. No, they was in there for some months, weeks, years, trying to figure out how to actually map out the right words, the legality, how to build out the legal system itself. A lot of scholars were sitting on that. And then how is this going to transform over time? And over time, we've seen it when you go back and you study it and you review it, what it's done and how it's been shifted. And more often than not, the U.S. Constitution has only ever been shifted until recently in times of absolute desperation. desperation. The first alteration to the Constitution came post Reconstruction out of desperation because African Americans, newly free slaves, were pushing it. You said we were going to get these rights. You said we were going to get these things. And in case you haven't noticed, we have full representation, and we, contrary to popular belief, understand how to use it.
Yes.
That created something.
Yep.
That level of freedom.
And that has created the fear today. That has created the backlash today. That is scary to some when a group of people suppressed people wake up. And that's frightening. So what happens is you want laws changed to where it's not about the freedom of a vote. It's just about control. You just do what we say, and then when I'm done, my son gonna tell you to do what we say, and then this is what we're fighting against.
You just revert back. You revert back to your natural instinct, your predisposition of power control, which is fine. We absolutely all understand that now. Guess what? The fear on our end isn't as great as it once was because of our ability to understand your generation's ability to learn. You witnessed things in your generation firsthand that your parents' generation, while they were able to witness it, they couldn't always discuss it openly. But because of a Dr. King and a Thurgood Marshall and individuals who grew themselves into certain positions during that period, you all were able to say, you know what? Well, when I come out of this and change my position, not only are my people going to know, but they're going to fully understand that there's something there that once was already there. That's the key. That was already there.
Right.
We just got to get it back.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we get it back, we can't lose it.
Can't lose it.
Hey, John, we are at the end of the podcast, and this was great. And I got to go back and see. I hope we had quite a few people that were watching this. If not, we're going to get it edited. Our producer will edit it, and we will put it back on as a watch party or whatever we need to do. It is going to be on our YouTube channel and on our website. Our website is theredcubpodcast.com. YouTube, Garland Podcast. And again, DJ, you end up being our only guest, but you are a very, very important, because you are right there. You're right there. Okay, you live in there, you work there. Okay, you see things a lot before we see them. Okay, that's what intelligence is. That's what the United States Central Intelligence. That's how it works. And so we appreciate your insight.
Absolutely.
Tune in next week. Next week is our special podcast. It's our MLK, Martin Luther King special holiday podcast. And we're going to have Miss Mamie King Chalmers, civil rights activist. She was part of the Footsteppers, which along with the Freedom Riders was very, very instrumental in the civil rights movement. She is the lady in that iconic picture that was sprayed by those police officers in Birmingham, Alabama. Okay, she will be our guest next week, Saturday the 16th at 10 o'clock a.m. And again, that's going to be very, very, that's going to be dynamic. Okay, again, it's we're commemorating Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, and she will give us some insight on her interactions with Dr. King and what she did in that regards to that civil rights movement. So again, we thank you so much, DJ. We thank you, and we'll see everybody in 2 weeks. Be safe, peace amongst this land, and we just hope things will trend in a peaceful direction.
Absolutely.
Again, we'll see you next week.
Take care.
Take care.